Let us go now to the next subject, purification.
The unfolding of powers belongs to the side of consciousness. Purification of the bodies belongs to the side of matter. You must purify each of your three working bodies, mental, astral, and physical. Without that purification, you had better leave yoga alone. Annie Besant.
When Annie Besant talks about yoga, she's talking about yoga in a theosophical sense, like the path of occultism. Of course, yoga as a practice, and we know is perfectly fine. But the first concept here is the idea of the unfoldment of consciousness and the purification of the vehicles of consciousness. As I mentioned, some traditions place emphasis on the consciousness part, and these traditions tend to be more non-dualistic. The reason why they place emphasis on the consciousness aspect is because consciousness is the one that is one with everything. So it is harder to realize the unity of everything by means of the vehicles of consciousness, which are always individual. That these are the ways that the universal consciousness, as we said, is trying to express itself in different ways. So when you think of consciousness, the unfoldment of consciousness doesn't really need any effort. The unfoldment of consciousness that doesn't need many things that the vehicles of consciousness may need. For example, if you want to realize that state of consciousness that is beyond the mind, the emotions, the body, you need to drop any activity on those levels. And what we call effort is normally a mental effort. You know, when you are trying to do something, trying to maintain your poise, all that trying comes from our mental will, let's say. Therefore, that trying itself is keeping consciousness on the mental level. And the non-dualistic approaches, many times they talk about effort as an obstacle for this particular reason. What they don't always mention is, especially in modern times, if you read, for example, Advaita Vedanta is a non-dualistic tradition. Now, if you read Advaita Vedanta from Shankaracharya, who was the founder of the school, or one of the founders, you see that Shankaracharya had always integrated the idea of a discipline and certain things, even though he said actions will never bring liberation, because the actions come from the self. They purify the mind, and the mind needs to be purified. And once the mind is purified, liberation happens. So there is a place for effort in Shankaracharya, but in modern non-duality, there is far more emphasis on the non-effort aspect. Now, though that is true, there is also a place in the spiritual development where we have to work on our vehicles of consciousness so that they can be aligned and set like in tune with consciousness. And as that work is more and more established in our vehicles of consciousness, then the possibility of no effort becomes a reality. But if we start with the idea of non-effort, that is a tricky idea. For the most part, as I mentioned, the non-dual approaches were kept secret in humanity. For example, in Tibetan Buddhism, the Dzogchen tradition, which is very non-dualistic, Dzogchen was only taught to monks after going through all the training that they used to go through. And in fact, there were so few monks that had the requisites to be able to be taught Dzogchen. There were so few of them that there was a danger of losing that tradition. And when the Tibetans came out of Tibet because of the Chinese invasion, they started teaching Dzogchen to everybody. If you see the first books on Dzogchen that were published here, The monks were saying, we are teaching this to preserve the tradition because this is going to be lost. And now in the West, many people are trying to practice Dzogchen without the right context and foundation. And then, with this idea of non-effort and that everything is perfect in itself and self-liberate the emotions and thoughts, then they sleep with each other's wives and drink and all this. That is a complete misunderstanding of what this is about. So before that, there is a need for the purification of the vehicles of consciousness. And then consciousness can unfold and express itself through all the vehicles. And that is what we are going to see today.
The strain on the physical body when the higher consciousness compels it to vibrate responsively is very great at the present stage of evolution. And unless the external circumstances are very favorable, this strain is apt to cause nervous disturbance, hypersensitiveness, and with its attendant evils. Hence, most of those whose most important work is done out of the body remain apart from the busy haunts of men. If they desire to throw down into the physical consciousness the knowledge they use on the higher planes. Any vessel.
So we could say we live in two different worlds. We talked briefly about this before. One is when we are awake, we are in this moving on the physical plane. But when the body goes to sleep, or if the person is a yogi, when that person goes into meditation, then in both cases, our soul is free. Let's talk in a vaguer way so that we don't go into technicalities. The soul is free to live in its own realm. So whatever the soul does when the body is asleep or in meditation is not necessarily remembered by the body. Let's say we go to sleep and then we wake up. During that period at night, especially if the person is a person that is working in spirituality, that person is awake on the inner planes. That person may be doing some work on the inner planes. But then when we wake up, we don't remember any of that for several reasons. One of the reasons is that the physical brain is not ready to receive retain the memory of what was done there, because the connection is not being established. And there is a reason why the connection is not being established. Many people in the New Age, they think that it's a great thing to become clairvoyant and to perceive more. And if you see modern current culture, most human beings are overwhelmed by the amount of information that we are receiving. If on top of that you open up a new dimension, the astral plane, and you start receiving all this information, many times the person is not really able to handle this, and it becomes hysterical, or many of the mystics were hysterical because there is so much pressure, so much stress on the body to live in these two worlds that the nerves get very frazzled. That even happens with normal life. When we get stressed, our nerves are frazzled. If on top of that we have all this other information, people get unbalanced. So one of the things that Theosophy always emphasizes is that if that information is going to come to the brain, we need to purify our physical body, the emotional and the mental body, so that the vehicles of consciousness can hold the strain without being unbalanced. Actually, Annie Besant, when she started her work, her political work for Indian liberation, she had to shut off the bringing down to the brain of her clairvoyance and all that, because she said the body is not able to, if she had to be engaged so much in the world, with all that stress added to whatever she was bringing from the higher planes, she knew it was going to be too much for the body. So we may be doing many things on the inner planes that we don't remember on the physical plane. And we may have a lot of understanding on the higher planes that may not be accessible to us on the lower planes. So we need to start trying to connect all the principles, but for that we we need to purify our vehicles, and that's what we are going to see.
Any expansion of consciousness is valueless unless the personal vehicles of thought, feeling, and action are sufficiently refined to receive and express its results. These laws may be summed up as purification of thought, refinement of feeling, and control of bodily conduct. Jeffrey Hudson.
So he talks about 3 levels of purification, which we are mentioning: the thinking level, the feeling, and the action of the body. And consciousness may have some insights or expansions, as we call them, but if the brain cannot catch them and retain them, then that expansion cannot really affect the personality. The idea in Theosophy is that our soul is far, far more evolved than anything that the personality can express. We all are far more than we can express on the physical plane. As soon as we leave the body behind, either at death or when we go to sleep, we are, as sometimes it is said, symbolically, we are angels. But then we come into the body and we become this very limited person. So consciousness may be very wise, but unless the different bodies can bring down that information, then the personality, the personal experience that are ourselves, cannot profit from it. You see how sometimes it comes as an intuition in a vague way. Somebody was telling me during the break when she was 14 that she was searching for answers that Theosophy is giving since she was in the church. And all this search for answers come from the soul already knows all this and is trying to filter down that information to the personality. Now the soul knows far more than what we are aware here, and the more we can purify our vehicles of consciousness, the more that divine wisdom that we were talking about can come to the body.
The main preparation needed for receiving in the physical vehicle the vibrations of the higher consciousness are: number 1, its purification from grosser materials by pure food and pure life. 2, the subjugation of the passions and cultivation of an even, balanced temper and mind. 3, the habit of quiet meditation on lofty topics, fixing the mind on higher things. 4, the cessation that restless, excitable hurry of the mind, which keeps the brain continually at work. And 5, the genuine love for things of the higher world, that makes them more attractive than the objects of the lower. Annie Best.
So here there is a description of the different points, and of course, as always in Theosophy, these are very high ideals. We need to learn how to relate to ideals. These ideals is the direction in which we have to move. Wherever we are, it is fine, it's wherever we are. What we need to do is not to get to the full accomplishment of this, but to move in that direction. We may not be able to, say, meditate every day for half an hour because we may be too busy. But we may be able to make some changes in our lives that go into that direction, that gives us at least some pauses in the day, for example. And then, as we make the effort, when the time is right, life will start rearranging our circumstances so that we can get closer and closer to this. So whenever you see all these ideas, take them as an inspiration. They can become an inspiration or they can become a frustration. It depends how you take them. Take them, say, if you don't have ambition, this is like the painting of the perfect way of life that eventually you can attain. Even whether it is in this lifetime or in a different one, it's the same, because in a future lifetime you will feel yourself as much as you feel now. So time is not really important. But take it as this inspiration and see how close you can get there, without frustration, without ambition, how close you can get there. And have confidence that in your earnest effort, life will little by little be rearranged around you. So here you see the different points: physical purification, trying to develop a state of equanimity that involves an emotional purification, giving some time to yourself to consider spiritual topics so that we start awakening the higher mind. The cessation of that. I remember reading once Ramana Maharshi. That was a funny story. They used to get up like in the ashram. Ramana Maharshi was a Hindu sage. I think he died in the 50s or so. And the people in the ashram were used to get up at 4 and they would chop the vegetables to prepare breakfast and lunch. And some of them would get up at 4, do this with Ramana Maharshi there, also he would help. And then they would go back to sleep. They weren't supposed to, but so they were chopping the vegetables really fast to go back to sleep. And he asked them, why are you chopping so fast? And they said, well, because we want to go and meditate. We don't want to waste time. And Ramana Maharshi said, if you do things slow, everything you do can be a meditation. To never hurry, because when you hurry, then your mind is restless. So learn to do things slow, and then every act is a meditation, because you can do it with awareness. So unfortunately, our current society is constantly pushing us to hurry, to do more things, and the more desires we have, then the more things we have to do, the more things we have to take care about, or care of. In the US, there is a movement that is called voluntary simplicity, which is a movement to trying to go back to a simpler way of life. That simpler way of life is the way of life that people live already in Argentina, but that's because they don't have enough money to have a non-simple life. But you see that this culture, the more money and affluence and wealth you have, we use it to get busier and more restless. So in simple ways, we should try in our life to get back to a simpler way of life, whatever is suitable for us, knowing that the simplest our life is, the easiest it is to have a more peaceful mind, a more peaceful life, to work on this.
And sometimes I think life fragments us. We have our working day, and then we come home from work and we need to do our physical activities, so we go to the gym or run or walk or ride a bike, and then on Sundays we get our spirituality or our religion at church. And it seems so much that if we view life that way, then trying to live this theosophical life is so much harder, because I can simplify my life as much as I think possible. But it seems in this life, since I have children, and that no matter how simple I am, things still get complicated. So I really had to find a need. As I was reading this, I was thinking, woo, good, I got the first half of the first one done. Yay me. And it does get frustrating, because when you're trying to do this and you're very earnest and you get the concepts and you get the ideas, but life isn't cooperating with you right at the moment, for me, it really was a time to step back and say, okay, maybe this is really my training ground, and through the chaos of parenting and where life is, that's where I have to do my true work, is day to day.
Yeah, and that is exactly what it is. Our daily life, however it is our training. So what these ideals mean is that you will have, for example, if you are parenting, some amount of chaos, some amount of frustration, or of yelling or whatever. Okay, try to see how much you can move in this direction. Some things may be inevitable, but that is, we don't need to expect to attain perfection at the moment. We just need to move in that direction, however much life allows us, and that's all we have to do. We are not meant to be perfect. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need to study or to discuss any of these things.
And if you look at the founders, HPB and Alcott, HPB did all this more spiritual work, and she was eventually, they say she was eventually initiated and had her contact with the masters. But then you look at Alcott, and he was never initiated, and everybody always wondered why. Why was he looked over? I mean, he had contact with the masters, but in order to be in that spiritual space, that area, he couldn't do it because of all the groundwork that he was doing, all the physical work that he was doing, all the ways that he was going about spreading Theosophy. So right there we have a perfect example of somebody who was working within the world and doing great work for the society, and HPB, who is doing equally great work, but she had a different path.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the master, in one of the letters, he recognizes, because some people were complaining about Alcott, and the master said, well, he could be far wiser, he could be far calmer if he were an initiate, but he's not an initiate because he's helping you. And of course, that is part of it's actually our aim in the society. Our aim, we are going to talk about initiation and all that, but our aim is not to climb the spiritual ladder. Our aim is to help. So if in this personality, in this lifetime, my help is in this particular field, doing administration work as Alcott did, that is fine. What we are trying to do is to be helpful wherever life puts us. And of course, if we understand how things work, Alcott's sacrifice during that lifetime will produce far greater rewards in the future than if he selfishly had said, I don't want to do this, I want to nourish my spiritual nature. So this is important in the Theosophical approach. Service is first, all the rest are means for service.
Purification of thoughts. How shall you purify the thought body? By right thinking. Pure and lofty thoughts are composed of rapid vibrations and can only affect the rare and subtle grades of mind stuff. When such a thought causes the mental body to vibrate, particles of the coarser matter are shaken out of the body, and their place is taken by particles of finer grades, and thus better materials are built into the mental body. Similarly, base and evil thoughts draw into the mental body the coarser materials suitable for their own expression, and these materials repel and drive out the finer kinds. Annie Besson.
So as we said in some of the other sessions, thinking is the way that we feed the mental body. So whatever thoughts we have, we are attracting the matter necessary to hold those thoughts. So knowing that principle, we can start working little by little in trying to encourage the positive thoughts and to discourage the negative thoughts. Again, we won't be able to eradicate negative thoughts all of a sudden from our minds. We just need to learn ways to move in that direction. So meditation, if we can spend some time in the day in the contemplation of spiritual truths, that is a way in which we engage in these high thoughts, and then we attract this kind of matter. Also when we study, during the day, if we don't have something to do, maybe see if you can think about something spiritual during the day, if you have the spare time. And then when negative thoughts come, try to find strategies not to feed them. Many times you will fail, but you will find that there are some strategies. It is said that the best way when you have a negative thought is to think of the opposite. For example, if you have thoughts, you are upset, just try to think about love or tolerance or these virtues. Now that many times is really hard, because when you are in the mood of being upset, to be able to change that mood into the opposite requires quite a bit of maturity and separation, this de-identification from your thoughts. So that may not be possible. So what is the next best option? Well, maybe instead of, if you are in this mood, negative mood, and you cannot start trying to think of something positive, then direct your attention, your mind, to something that is neutral and that your mind may be interested in. I don't know, if you like working in the garden, at least start thinking of the garden and the beauty of the garden. You do it consciously. It's not that you are escaping away from the negative thought. It's that your mind can think only of one thing at a time. You recognize the negative thought and you say, I don't want to give into it. And then you consciously turn your mind into something that the mind is interested in. That is easier. But even if you cannot do even that, get consciously distracted. Think of it's better to distract your mind consciously than to let your mind keep feeding the negative thoughts. Of course, the ideal is to come to a place where not only you can think of the opposite, but you can witness the thoughts without getting involved, and we are going to talk about that. But there are always degrees, there are always stages, and in some aspects we may be very mature, and then we have these push buttons that we are very mature, and we have to deal with the different situations in different ways. So look for different strategies not to fall into negative thoughts. And when you do, just observe it, learn from it, see why couldn't I do that? And see, I really felt the need to feel this. Okay, how would I deal with this next time? No, it's a work. We are a work in progress.
And every time we start talking about this, even though I know where he's going with this, my mind automatically goes to like the most extreme thought that I have. And as soon as he says that, I hear in my head going, yeah, right. I'm really going to distract myself from this frustration or this irritation or this anger. But then I have to remind myself that he's not talking about, or the teachings are not talking about doing this when you're in the midst of a volcanic eruption, but it's talking about when to do it in those little things, when we're standing in line and we're waiting in line and the line's not moving and we start getting irritated. That's at a time that we can shift our thought or watch that emotion or little things like that, and then eventually that level gets reached where we can do it, because what we're trying to do is that's our concentration. The meditation is when we do it, and the contemplation part is when it automatically comes, that irritation, that anger, something comes up, and we've tapped into that ground space or that substratum, that automatically that's where our mind can go.
Yes, and we are going to see a little of this question of taking things. We have to take things with the simpler aspects and then work our way to more complex ones. And also we always have to try to catch the process at the beginning. I think we have a quote about that. But.
The thoughts must be turned away from evil and never allowed to dwell for one moment consciously on the unclean. The source of evil ways will be stopped when the mind dwells even on the pure. Ever. When the mind dwells ever on the pure. So also will evil desires cease, when no longer generated, stimulated, and sustained by evil thoughts. The purified mind-body means the purified desire body and the purified action body. Andy Bessler.
So this is like the end product. This is a person that is a disciple or is an initiate. And what the point here is that if we purify our mind, our emotions will naturally follow that, and our actions too. The mind is very important in that aspect. Although many times, that is not an absolute truth, in the sense that if we are weak emotionally, the emotions many times keep dragging the mind into that. So this is why we need to work on all the levels. But essentially, it is for example, when Krishnamurti explores this question of desire, he always says that the problem is thought, because there is no problem with sensation. You see something beautiful, that produces a sensation of pleasant sensations, a sensation of beauty. That's perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. Then thought comes and says, I wish I could get this, I wish I could hold on to this. And then desire begins. So the problem with desire is not so much an emotional problem, the sense of pleasure that seeing something beautiful can give you. It's a mental problem when the thought clings to it. So we can learn how to go through life being sensitive, responding to beauty and to what is not beauty, and to pleasant and unpleasant feelings. But if we learn not to let the mind cling to those sensations, the sensations come and go, and we are like the watcher, and the sensation arises, nothing wrong with the sensation, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant. If we don't let thought cling to it, then the sensation will leave, and there is nothing wrong happen. But when thought clings to it and begins to create a mood, then that begins to influence our action, our mental, emotional, or physical action. So thought, the thinking aspect at this point in evolution is very important.
Emotional purification. The astral body is purified by right desire. Desire nobly, and the astral body will evolve the organs of good desires instead of the organs of evil ones. The secret of all progress is to think and desire the highest. Never dwell on the fault, the weakness, the error, but always on the perfected power. And slowly, in that way, you will be able to build up perfection in yourself. Annie Besson.
So again, with desire, we will come to a point where what we feel couldn't be even defined as desire. But the way to go there is to start putting our attention in noble things and beginning to desire noble things. This is how the process of purification of desire happens. So instead of being constantly desiring things for me to enjoy by myself, begin to try to desire things that are more abstract, that are more universal, desire for the good of the community in which you are or the organization in which you are. Put your thoughts in, your aim is trying to see how you can help so that the organization, your lodge or whatever other organization you belong to can be the best that it can be. So it's a question of switching your objects of desire to things that are more spiritual, more universal, more abstract, because whatever is abstract is less personal, And by doing that, you are transmuting the nature of desire. It's all a question of what's your purpose in life. Why are you alive? If we think that we are alive to have a good time, then desires will always be personal. If we start understanding that the purpose of life is far wider, automatically our desires will begin to change the quality.
The whole tendency of our civilization is to increase desire, to multiply our requirements. Things which are regarded as luxuries by one generation are considered necessities of life by the next, and our desire is ever reaching out in new directions. We must learn to limit these desires, to live a simpler life, to distinguish necessities from superfluities. It is better to decrease our wants and leave ourselves time to rest, rather than to work ourselves to death in the desperate effort to satisfy constantly increasing wants. Cultivate contentment. Let your longings be for progress and usefulness rather than for possessions, and you will find that they have eliminated one of the most fruitful and potent causes of miseries, Leadbeater. And then this was written, 100 years ago.
Yeah, I think Thomas More. You mean Leadbeater there. Yes, right. He would be, if he knew how we are right now, this was in the 1920s, right. More or less. Right now we are even worse than this. And I think that's very, very true, that things we never had certain things. Now they invent it, they say that we need them, we get them, and then we cannot live without them. So, of course there are many things that are useful, and we can use technology. These mics, the camera, this reaching other people, is all the positive aspect. But that is the trap. If all these advances were absolutely evil, then it would be easy to stay away from them. But because they have good aspects, it's far harder. So we need to be very intelligent and see how we can use things without being used by those things. And this part where he says, value more to have time to rest, or to not rest lazily, but to have this state of mind that is calmer. Value that more than having more possessions. And it reminded me of some of these theories of the ideal places, the utopias. And in one of these utopias, the idea was that members in this, it was an island, that members in this island, they only work half a day because they valued far more leisure time than possessions. So they didn't need to work the whole day. They had few possessions and they had more leisure time. Leisure time. And Plato also would say, to be a philosopher, you need to have leisure time. You need to have free time to be a philosopher.
And in this book, Utopia, they also changed houses every 2 years. So
that you wouldn't get attached to things.
Yeah, they changed jobs and then they changed houses just to break that attachment of accumulation.
Yeah, so the essential point here is, we are all in different circumstances. If you have a whole family depending on you, maybe you are not able to impose certain standards of life, or wouldn't be right. But in whatever circumstances you are, try to see how much you can simplify your life and free your mind from worries. And this is something, again, gradual, little by little, see what you can do. And when you take a step forward, then life responds and take a step, forward towards you.
I must here warn you of a danger. There is a rough and ready way of quickly bringing about dispassion. Some say to you, kill out all love and affection, harden your hearts, become cold to all around you, put a wall between yourself and all objects of desire. Then dispassion will be yours. It is true that it is comparatively easy to acquire dispassion in that way, but by that you kill more than desire. You put round yourself, who is love, a barrier through which he is unable to pierce. You isolate yourself where you ought to be embracing others. You kill love and not only desire. Annie Besant.
So this is the question of detachment. How do we acquire this detachment? And detachment is usually interpreted in this cold way. If you are detached, that means you don't love. And it's actually the opposite. A person that is truly detached can love in a universal way without imposing conditions, because that person is not looking for things from the others. People like Jesus could love unconditionally because they were not attached to a particular response, to something that the other had to give them. So detachment is actually the freeing of love rather than the killing of it. But because it is you have these two options. How do you get past attachment? Either you work hard at maturing and getting this attitude in which you are related to everything without trying to get things from them, or there is a far easier way that Annie Besant mentions there. You stop caring. If you stop caring, you shut the world off, then it's far easier to be detached. But that is absolutely the wrong way of going around it. This is why the idea of unity is so important, because you can be spiritual in the sense of detached if you don't love anybody, or anything, if you are not committed to anything, if you don't care about anything. But that is far from being a spiritual attitude, even if it looks like that. A spiritual attitude is the opposite. It's an attitude that has to do with unity, but this unity with a maturity in which you are not, taking off your center by the circumstances.
It's the same as escaping to a cave to do your spiritual practice.
Mm-hmm.
When desire is for the purely abstract, when it has lost all trace or tinge of self, then it has become pure. The first step towards this purity is to kill out the desire for the things of matter, since they can only be enjoyed by the separated personality. The second is to cease from desiring for oneself even such abstractions as power, knowledge, love, happiness, or fame. Life itself teaches these lessons, for all such objects of desire are found Dead Sea fruit in the moment of attainment. This much we learn from experience. Intuitive perception seizes on the positive truth that satisfaction is attainable only in the infinite. The will makes that conviction an actual fact of consciousness, till at last all desire is centered on the eternal. HPV.
So this is, in a few words, like the whole process of purification of desire. The first thing is, she says, the material things can only be enjoyed by yourself. So those are the grosser aspects, objects of desire. And this was also known by the Greeks, the Greek philosophers, even the Epicureans, that we think Epicurus was a hedonistic person or philosophy that was based on pleasure and desire. But it was very different from that. And he said, the pleasure that you can get through the senses is a very low kind of pleasure. And he would say the animals also get pleasure through the senses. That there is nothing special in getting pleasure through the senses. The intellectual pleasure is far more, human. It's not an animal kind of pleasure. Now here, when we are talking about all this again, the problem is not, because some religions misinterpret this and they think that the problem is the sensation of pleasure. This again, trying to retreat from sensations of pleasure. You are a Buddhist monk, you cannot look at a woman. That is, again, this process of isolating yourself, shutting off, is trying to run away from pleasure instead of understanding it and understanding what's the right place of pleasure and what's the problem with it. So there is nothing wrong with pleasure. The problem is when our thinking comes and tries to repeat that pleasure in the future. So a pleasant sensation, you are just enjoying whatever, they bring some good food. You eat it, you see that it's good food, and you enjoy that. And there is nothing wrong in that. Now, if you cling to the pleasant sensation and you expect the next time to have the same sensation, then if the food is not as good as it was the first time, you suffer and you become angry and you want to talk to the chef and you want to see what was wrong now with it. You see, the problem is not the pleasure, the problem is what the mind does with it. So if we keep the mind from interfering, the food is good, you enjoy it. The food is not good the next time, you realize that it's not good. But it's not a big deal. The sensation is not pulling your action. You just say, yeah, it wasn't good. The end of it. So same with anything in life. We need something, we buy it, we use it, but there is a difference between, as I said, using an object and beginning to depend on the object because we think that the object will make us happy. So first is to try to transcend that aspect in which we think that the objects will make us happy. Then we go to, many spiritual people already are there, even though we still enjoy or may desire physical objects. We realize that is not what will make us happy, but then we think what will make us happy is to accumulate virtues, to accumulate hours of meditation, to accumulate knowledge. So that is the second level of desire. It's better than the material desire, but still is wrong in the sense that we are clinging to these things, expecting them to make us happy. Again, what Krishnamurti said, do not do things to be happy. Be happy and then do things, because that is the trap. If you expect that you do this because then you will be happy, then you are a slave of that. And then eventually, as Blavatsky says, we realize that the only happiness is in the eternal. And the eternal is this state of consciousness which is always immutable, which is in us, and that no matter what sensation is in the body at the moment, when we get in touch with that state, then we are living from this state that is immutable, even though sensations may come and go. And we are going to talk about that in other sessions.
Desire must be checked by the mind refusing to picture the passing pleasure which the possession of the object would entail, and picturing to itself the more lasting sorrow it would cause. Annie Besson.
So as we said, the mind is always interfering and generating these images, oh, if I had that car, or if I had this or that. So we can learn to let go of that mechanism. So Annie Besson is mentioning here a technique that may be useful. I think they use it in Tibetan Buddhism to try to actually actively imagine the problem that comes out of indulging in certain things. You know, there is food, you want to eat more than you really need. Then maybe if you stop and you do a little drama in your head and you visualize yourself having health problems, that helps to curb the desire. See if that helps you. Maybe you don't even need to do that. You just learn to prevent the mind from projecting all this pleasure that it expects to get from it. But these are strategies. You know, we don't have a lot of time to go into each one of them, but I want to mention some strategies that you can try and see if they work with you.
Physical purification. The difficulty lies in the absorption of the present body in its present environment, in its coarse unresponsiveness to the delicate thrills in which alone the soul can speak. The aspirant must purify and refine the body till it is able to receive impressions from the subtler planes. How shall you purify the physical body? You must regulate it in all its activities, in sleep, in food, in exercise, in everything. Annie Besson.
Well, we are more familiar with this concept. You know, today many people are vegetarian or go to yoga or just out of trying to be healthy physically because perhaps they want to live longer. Probably, you know, we are constantly messing things up and we want to keep living longer so that we can mess things up more. But anyway, we don't know why we want to keep living longer. The idea is that, you know, obviously the physical body is important, but again, it should not be the aim for our struggle. In The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky explains that at the beginning of human civilization, they would worship the body because the body was the temple of the spirit. It is because the body is there that our consciousness can manifest and evolve and grow. But then soon they forgot why they were worshiping the body, and now the body began to be the object of worship. And then, you know, we end up like today, that we worship the body and we worship physical health, like if that were the aim of life. And physical health is important, but it can also be a means of self-centeredness. To be too worried about this for the wrong reasons is again a form of self-centeredness. So yes, we need to keep the body healthy so that consciousness can express in the right way, so that the higher consciousness can express through the body without producing strain and tension. And obviously the way is, you know, to have good food. Normally a vegetarian diet is recommended because the animal diet is, you know, has a grosser kind of astral energy associated, which is the kind of energy that we are trying to get rid of.
Once again, in the food, a vegetarian diet is the goal. I found that at times when we're in the middle of a busy life, a vegetarian diet is hard to follow, and some of us get sick, or we can't function. I know there was a time I was working very long hours, and there's only so many seeds and nuts and peanut butter that you can eat throughout a day. So once again, that is the aim, that is the goal, and it's something to point towards. And I always say too, if you can't do without a vegetarian diet, then at least eat lower on the scale of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Blavatsky used to say, eating fish is far better than eating steak, from many points of view. I've been vegetarian for half of my life, but I'm not a fundamentalist. We tend to maybe to pay undue importance to one level and disregard others. Some people think they are spiritual because they are vegetarian, and then they don't take care of what they feel or what they think. We have to see everything in the right perspective. If we are serious, then we have to try to move in that direction on all the levels. But then there are circumstances, that may change or that may not allow you to fulfill the ideal for the time being, as Michelle was saying. Always be rational, or don't be fanatical in any aspect of this. So, of course, I think our ideal is to get to a diet. Blavatsky always spoke very strongly against drinking, for example, alcohol. She said that the alcohol affects the pineal gland and the pituitary glands, and these are the two more important glands to bring the higher consciousness into the body. So see if you can, if you drink alcohol, if you can reduce it. Well, as you know, Blavatsky smoked. Many times people that have nerves that are too frazzled, they feel the need to smoke because the smoking will calm the nerves down. And some people cannot prevent it, but also that is something that we should aim at not doing. We all know today that is not healthy, smoking, but also from a more esoteric point of view, it's something that keeps our nerves from being fresh. But again, see, it's not that you cannot be spiritual unless you don't smoke. My point here, I don't do anything of that, and I think that is our ideal, but I wouldn't be fanatical and judge people because they do this or they do that. So let us take this as a whole and understand that purification is far more complex than just a few physical things.
The man who is to be a yogi must not touch any food which is on the way to decay. Those things belong to the tamasic foods. Flesh foods come under the quality of activity. All forms in the animal kingdom are built up to express animal desires and animal activities. The yogi cannot afford to use these in a body meant for the higher processes of thought. All the foods which tend to growth, those are the most highly vitalized grains, fruits, all those things which have grown as their next stage in the life cycle. Those are the rhythmic foods, full of life and building up a body sensitive and strong at the same time. Annie Besant.
So again, here the idea, the yogi, and we can become yogis. I mean, in the sense that don't think of the yogi like the person that is in the cave, but as you get closer and closer to all of this, then your consciousness begins to work on more spiritual dimensions. That is what we meant by a yogi. But as Annie Besant says here, at the level of food in India, there is this idea of the gunas and the tamasic food, meaning food that tends to produce in you a state of laziness, a lack of energy, or the rajasic food, that is the food that tends to make you restless and it stimulates the passions, or the sattvic food that is more balanced and spiritual or help spirituality. So she says that the food that is in the process of growth tend to be sattvic food. And so you can see your diet also if you can incorporate little by little more of this than other kinds. But again, don't think that because you eat sattvic food, you will be spiritual. To be spiritual, there is far more that is needed. So first we are spiritual, and then we try to have the right diet so that that spirituality can manifest through the body. Let us not confuse cause and effect.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
And the gunas too, the sattvic, tamasic, and rajic, have both a negative and a positive. Pablo mentioned, the negative, the tamasic, that it's kind of a lazy, heavy side. But that also is needed at certain times, not necessarily in foods, but in our activity at life. The tamasic nature is someone who can hold still and stay where they are, where the rajasic in that case is somebody who's always moving, that might want to, flip from thing to thing. But then that rajasic energy might be the person that is able to move forward when the tamasic is being held back. So it's not just a negative or a positive, they both have both sides of the coin there. The pineal gland itself, illuminated, corresponds with divine thought. The pituitary body is the organ per se of the psychic plane. Pure psychic vision, not ordinary clairvoyance, is caused by the molecular motion of this body. Drunkenness and fever cause disorderly motion in the pituitary gland, and so produce illusions of sight, visions, hallucinations. This body is sometimes so affected by drunkenness that it is paralyzed, and the strict forbiddance of alcohol liquids to all students of occultism turns on this effect which alcohol produces on the pituitary body and the pineal gland, HPB.
So that is what I mentioned just a little bit ago. So are there any questions or comments about this purification, either physical, emotional, or mental? We can discuss a little how to deal with, daily situations, different strategies. I don't know if...
I was reading a book written by a lady who taught at Crotona. I don't know her name. It's about the 1920s, and she was talking about the oneness of our emotional body and the perception we have of the feelings. That as in evolution, the savage aspects of ourselves were the root of the higher feelings. And so seeing them as good and evil as such separates them out, and they're one in a sense. It's a gradual evolutionary change. That being said, really hurting another by cruel words can cause such beautiful regret that you actually become more sensitive in the process and value that. You become more perceptive of what you have actually, what the effect was in another person that did, or in the spiritual. And still it's something to be thankful for after the regret. And a thought that comes in that you perceive, that is perhaps separation, being thankful for that when you perceive it. Because you were talking about training at the elementals that come, and if we treat them with love, that could help too.
Yeah, we'll see that in the next session tomorrow. We'll talk more about the elementals. Good and evil is always relative. Something that is evil at some stage is good at some other stage. So when we talk about, I think there are things that are really good. There are, that really are good. There are things that really are bad, but only at specific stages. So at this stage, if you do this, that's definitely not good. But at a different stage, if you do this, the same thing, that may be good. So good and evil are relative. Now, even all evil has the seed for good, because it is through our mistakes that we learn. So it is through suffering that we attain wisdom. Now, we may suffer once, and if we are intelligent, we learn from that suffering, and then that suffering was a blessing in disguise. Or if we are not paying attention, we may suffer 100 times, and then at the last time we may realize it. In both cases, suffering will produce something good. But you can get to that goodness or to that good result without having to go through that 100 times. So relatively speaking, we could say, well, it was not good to be stubborn and keep, having that attitude that brought you this situation 100 times, although ultimately it's good because you will learn. So my point here is that good and bad exist, but they are relative. If you read Annie Besant's little book on Dharma, that's very illuminating, and she explains ambition, for example, for a person that is awakening spiritually is bad, and ambition will keep you from flourishing. But for a person that is in an earlier stage, if that person doesn't have ambition, that person cannot evolve. That person will be in a state of inactivity. It is ambition that takes the tamasic nature of a person and transform it into an active person. So without ambition, humanity could not evolve. But with ambition, this other group in humanity cannot evolve, the group that is awakening spiritually. So everything in the universe has a purpose, and evil is what is out of place. Not any particular thing is absolutely evil. Evil is what is out of place. So an attitude that is not in tune with your stage of maturity, that is a wrong attitude. But that same attitude in other stage may be an essential attitude. So everything is very fluid, and we will talk about the elementals and the attitude.
Yeah, I think the people that were Theosophists, there was a draw in the 70s, 80s and 90s that people wanted to travel to sacred sites. I think that their heart drew them. I was one of these people that we did spiritual work with a specific lady and travelled to a lot of sacred sites. But what it did for me, which I think with other people, it helped to open up the pituitary gland and the pineal gland as far as helping as well as what I learned from the TS, but it helped to go to these sacred places, and it helped to open up. It's like rewiring. It was like rewiring of the electromagnetic system, and maybe sort of the kundalini, where you had allowed for, with going to these sites, it allowed for some of this higher knowledge to also come in, and that was possibly why there was a lot of people that felt redrawn to go to these sacred sites. I don't know so much nowadays, but there was a period where a lot of people used to go to these sacred sites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is an article, I think, by Suba Rowe, where he talks about sacred sites and all that. So, yeah, in my approach to life and to the spiritual life, I tend to think that everything is important, and nothing is by itself the all-important. So yes, going to sacred sites may be very helpful, but then I wouldn't go to the extreme to thinking that the spiritual life is based on going to sacred sites, for example. So all things are helpful, and also people are different. I know that some people, when they meditate, for them it is important how they put their hands, or the environment, or how they breathe. And in my experience, in my personal experience, none of that matters to my meditation. So, for me, that is irrelevant. That doesn't mean that is irrelevant in itself. There are other organizations for which that is very important. So this is why I like the Theosophical Society, where we don't try to impose a particular way of doing things because we recognize our diversity. So I'm always for, telling people, try and see what inspires you, what helps you. And then if it helps you to be a better person, then that is working with you.
As far as reasons for vegetarianism are concerned, okay, my parents have turned to Theosophy right back on my mother's case, before 1940. But in my experience, in my personal experience, none of that matters to my meditation. So I am always for, trying to impose a particular way of doing things because we recognize our diversity. So I'm always for, telling people, try and see what inspires you, what helps you. And then if it helps you to be a better person, then that is working with you.
As far as reasons for vegetarianism are concerned, okay, my parents have turned to Theosophy right back on my mother's case before 1940.
But the reasons that went into my head about why we stuck with vegetarianism right from the start were the things that my father showed me on hillsides. It was in the war effort, posted on the sheep cattle stations in the back of Hawke's Bay. He worked extremely hard there. His workbook, I think, showed over 450 acres cultivated with the old Caterpillar 22 tractor in 1 year. All operations, one man. Well, it was steep country. He didn't like what he was doing. Needless to say, he had a family to keep, and he did this work. But he certainly got it into my head why we were ripping the country to pieces with raising animals. Quite literally. I think I said to you something the other day, Pablo, that in a flood situation in the Vanuatu in comparatively recent years, the students, or someone at Massey University, calculated that there was 18 tonnes per second of New Zealand topsoil going under the Fitzherbert Bridge in Palmerston North. We don't have to turn just to spiritual inspiration as to why we stop eating meat and get away from our excessive dependence on animals.
It's there are many reasons, ecological, at the level of health, for compassion. There are many reasons that support the idea of a vegetarian diet, especially in our current culture. You know, if you are a native person and you go hunting and you hunt for whatever you need to eat at the moment, and you hunt an animal that was wild, that had a fulfilling life, you know, that animal being killed by your arrow or by a lion is no difference. That's how nature works. So there is not much cruelty if we were living in that way, in killing an animal to eat it. Of course, still you have the other part, that if you are a person that is trying to develop certain states of consciousness, eating meat keeps your emotional body and physical body a little, you know, less pure, and then there may be tension with the higher states of consciousness. But in what regards to the cruelty with animals, I think the problem in our culture is that the animals suffer their whole life in the way we are raising them so that we can eat. So there are many reasons why. But again, I wouldn't go to the extreme of saying, you know, you cannot be spiritual unless you are vegetarian. There are examples of people who were spiritual and were not vegetarian. But I think it's, you know, why would I try to, keeping the compassion aspect aside, why would I try to put more obstacles on myself? Already the work on ourselves is quite difficult, so I try to reduce any source of obstacles, you know, as much as possible.
Michelle, you mentioned the book Utopia. Do you have the author's name?
Thomas More.
Yeah, he was a...
Utopia for all.
Yes.
Yeah, I know,
It's a
that's
very
very
interesting book.
Well, actually, we have our own theosophical utopia, in a sense. If you read what the reader says about the coming of the six
The
sub-rays.
six sub-rays is really that's another nice bedtime story to read about what's coming. But there's a separate takeout on the coming of the sixth root race.
And he explains, how civilization will be at that time. And it's a very idealistic way of living and relating. And we could take it as our utopia and say, okay, let's see if we can reproduce this.
We can.
Right, the ideas are, that we are the seeds for that. There's a question up here.
It's just occurred to me that the first object of the society is brotherhood. So we don't have to be vegetarians to be members of the society.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
And, you know, like Pablo keeps stressing, we're at all different stages and
Or situations in life.
situations, right?
I just wondered if there are other food that we shouldn't be eating. Like, for example, I've heard that coffee's not good for our spiritual, and things like onions and garlic. I mean, these are all things that you read. I just wonder how apt they are.
Right,
Yeah.
the onions and garlic, I think, comes from Jainism, because they don't kill anything, and when you take an onion or a garlic, you take the whole plant. Instead of like taking an orange off a tree, the tree still lives.
Yeah.
So that's where I think that
And,
one comes
and also
from.
I think they are regarded as rajasic food. Rajas that stimulate restlessness
And now
in Hinduism.
Pythagoras said, was it Pythagoras said about eating beans?
Yeah, he didn't allow beans. But you know, we don't know why that
Right.
was. I mean, in theosophical literature, there is not a lot about specifically what food you can eat or not. So from the information we have in our literature, there is no much in that sense. I never saw anything against coffee or against tea. I remember HPV saying, well, anything in excess can kill you, even water. But I would think, I think we need to be sensitive to our bodies and see how our bodies respond to different food, different, you know, and see what kind of habits and diets help you stay more balanced and which ones throw you off balance, and that is your guide.
Yeah, because you could say the same about dairy. Dairy could have a very tamasic effect on you,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and with salt too, and anything
Oh,
like that.
Don't
But
take
if-
my salt away.
yeah, but exactly. If you see some bodies, because of the constitution of the body, may need certain kind of food to bring some balance. If your body tends to be tamasic, maybe you need to eat some more rajasic food, for example. So I wouldn't take these things in a non-intelligent way.